Hi, I'm Carla Pizzaci, CEO of WGSN, and your host of Lives for Tomorrow, the WGSN podcast about how we'll all live our lives in the future. Today, I'm joined by Laura Saunter, WGSN's Head of Retail Forecasting, to talk about how retail is evolving in the years to come. We're going to talk about how AI is impacting how we're shopping, the future of bricks and mortar, and how brands can really connect with tomorrow's consumer. So, join in for the conversation. I hope you enjoy it. So Laura, can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Of course. I'm Laura Saunter, and I'm the Head of Retail Forecasting at WGSN Insight.
Amazing. Okay, right, we're going to jump straight on in. Let's start with value. So shoppers are, whether brands like it or not, very much price conscious at the moment, but probably also more skeptical. I think we're kind of used to this ever-evolving kind of discount cycle. We'll find a discount somewhere. How can retailers start proving value over and above just it's a 10%, 15%, 20% buy two, get one free type way of getting people to actually spend some money?
So what I would say is that we are not even just entering, we are in a bit of a cost crisis at the moment in retail because margins are really under pressure on all sides.
Yeah.
So you've got retailers fighting for their lives over things like supply chain disruption and tariffs and geopolitical instability and all of those things. But at the same time, you've got a consumer who is a lot more, as you say, skeptical and a lot more aware of pricing and unfair pricing. So they're really looking out for things like shrinkflation, hidden markups, that sort of thing. So you've got this tension between retailers needing to protect their margins, but at the same time, a shopper who is kind of looking for a reason to distrust pricing or distrust promotions.
Yeah.
I think I saw a stat the other day that said like 84% of people just think that promotions are misleading at least some of the time.
Oh, really?
Which is quite powerful.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it comes down to this question of, does discounting work as a solo strategy anymore? No. Okay. I think people are a bit numb to it. As you say, they're either looking out for a promotion all the time, they're waiting for something to go into sale, or they don't really believe the after price. You know, they think, well, you've just intentionally upped the before price. So yes, discounting works as like maybe a one-off strategy, but it doesn't build long-term trust. And that's where this question of value comes in. I think value is really changing in meaning because it's less about affordability and it's more about, is this worth it for me? Is this worth my time? Is this worth my attention? And I think there's a couple of retailers who are doing interesting things around value.
Okay.
The first is around being extremely transparent with price. And I love the example from Elf Beauty. And last year, you know, they were being squeezed on all sides by tariffs and inflations and everything. And they had to put their prices up. They had to put their prices up by $1 on every product. And instead of just, you know, putting them up secretly and just hoping that no one would notice, they put out a social media message and some marketing collateral, and they were just really authentic and they were really honest. And they were like, look, guys, we've had to put our prices up. We're sorry, but this is the reality of scaling a business in this current climate. And it's that kind of authenticity, that kind of trust, and that kind of communication around value that I think is so important. It really gives people confidence in what they're buying and why the price is like that. And that idea of sort of, I guess, giving people control over what they're spending is also really important. I think there's a couple of nice examples of brands who do like a receipt where everything is broken down. Like, you know, this is exactly how much you're spending on water. This is exactly how much has gone towards materials of production or, you know, that kind of thing. And I think those kinds of little changes around value and making it seem really kind of worth people's time and worth people's money is really important. We're also seeing a lot more focus on things like hero products. I think having a hero product and then staying true to the price of it. Do you know the brand Me&M?
Yes. Yeah.
So they famously haven't increased the price of their hero product in 17 years.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. So like it's stayed at the same price consistently. And I think that's where, you know, you bring in that kind of like emotional resonance towards value. And I think it builds trust and things like that, because ultimately value is not just about affordability anymore. It's not just about, is this cheap? And I think that's why we've seen this massive shift towards things like private label. People aren't snooty about buying private label anymore. You know, that's the smart strategy. And they're also looking at products they buy and they're thinking, okay, can I use this again? Is this flexible? Is this multi-use? That sort of thing. So those kinds of things are defining value a lot more than just whether something's cheap or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. The podcast I recorded a few weeks back, more on the topic of sustainability, but we were talking about the and piece in there, which is just because something's sustainable is not a reason that anybody's going to buy it. And actually, if you want people to be more sustainable, you need to give them the other thing and sustainably afterwards. And actually, it's kind of the same thing here, right? What's the value add or the and on top of it, which means someone's going to go, okay, there's more in this for me. But I do like transparency.
I think it's like discounting is quite a reactive, almost empty strategy. Anyone can discount, but it takes a lot to really take a stance on transparent pricing and really sort of position yourself around value in a way that's like, you're an ally to your consumer, you're an ally to your customer. And I think that's really important. And that's the shift.
That's the shift. Okay, let's talk about rewards, because loyalty clubs are definitely nothing new. I'd say they've had a bit of a resurgence. They've become kind of cool. Like every teenage boy I know has a Tesco club card for, their meal deal at lunchtime. But it does feel like, well, now everybody's got one. And now you have to have like 1 million of them in your digital wallet. And that's quite frustrating. How do you think that will evolve to stay relevant to, again, a quite switched on consumer?
I think for a long time, loyalty has been extremely transactional. You buy a product, you earn points, and then you get a discount. But that model, it's quite outdated. It's falling a little bit flat. There's tons of loyalty schemes that all do the same thing, as you know. And I think especially for younger consumers, they're starting to think, okay, how does this brand or how does this product actually add value to my life in some way? And I think loyalty also has to evolve with that. And that's where this idea of what we're calling the transformation economy comes in. The transformation economy is it's the natural next iteration of the experience economy. Obviously, we all know what the experience economy is. It's been around for a really long time, but I think more and more people are looking for something more than just an Instagrammable moment. They want some kind of measurable change, measurable progress, something in their lives that they think, actually, yes, that's helped me to become a better person. I've learned a skill. I've helped the planet. I've become more connected with my community. So that's where we're seeing some of the most innovative retailers and brands evolving their loyalty schemes to have outcomes-based models. So rewarding people for participation over purchase. And it goes back to this consumer mindset shift that we're seeing, which is less about accumulation and more about aspiration.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So I think to put it tangibly, there's someone like Gymshark.
Yep.
Okay. So on their loyalty app, instead of getting points for buying a pair of leggings, you get points for completing a workout.
Oh, okay.
So
nice.
When you're a member of the IKEA loyalty scheme, you get points for how much you engage with planning a room using their software and how much you go to the cafe with your family, those kinds of things, rather than just how much you spend. Or if you're Adidas, you might let people win a pair of limited edition sneakers for taking part in a race. So it's that idea of outcomes-based models, which is so, so important. And that's where people are sort of changing their idea about loyalty away from just overconsumption and buying more and getting discounts towards something that okay, is this actually helping me in some way? Is this delivering some kind of change?
But that's the reality, isn't it? When everything has become so accessible, because there's no friction in a lot of that purchasing kind of stream, you don't feel necessarily, there's not the kind of thrill when that arrives on your doorstep, because it's just so easy to get it now. And I take about, there's expense that goes into it, but I've been talking quite a lot more about if you make someone work just a little bit, not like jump through lots of hoops, but putting a little bit of friction in, then when they actually get that product, there's not probably that's even kind of psychological, but I did something and now I've got this. I had to work a little bit hard for it. And that feels good.
Feels rewarding.
Yeah, it feels rewarding. We can't talk any topic at the moment without talking about AI. So AI-driven retail search is booming right now, and sort of, I guess, cohort after cohort are getting switched on to finding product via AI engines. How does that goal-based commerce fit in a world where it's going to be even easier to find a product, and arguably even easier to find a product with discount now?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's very easy for the consumer to find the product, but it's very difficult for the retailer to have their product surfaced in the right way. And that's why discovery is changing so much with goal-based commerce, because if you think about it, in the past, we could, put into a search bar black ankle boots, and we would be served up,
many.
Yeah. But now you or I could go to an AI assistant, and we could type in, "Hi, I'm going to a wedding in Tuscany in September. I'm a size 10 and I've got £400 to spend, and yellow doesn't suit me. And the bridesmaids are wearing navy."
Yeah.
And it would serve you up an incredible, rich load of product based on that question. So the way that things are changing is that people are starting increasingly with a goal in mind, which is to find that wedding outfit. They're not starting with a product anymore. They're starting with a goal. They're searching via mission, whether it's, help me pack for 3 nights in Ibiza and write me up a shopping list, or, fill my basket with healthy treats for my children on, under £50 or something like that. So the way that people are searching is different, but then also the way that the products are being surfaced is different. Because if you think about the way that e-commerce has been structured up to this point, it's been written for humans.
Yeah.
It's been written for humans to browse. Yeah. But now it's got to be legible for machines to read and understand and surface and serve up to the customer. So lots has to change. And the first thing that has to change at the back end is contextualizing products with much, much richer metadata.
Yeah.
So whereas before a retailer would just tag a SKU as black dress, now it has to have, garden party suitable, under £100, made from X, fits a larger size, those kind of things. Yeah. So it's all about enriching your product with as many contextual attributes as possible, so that you don't get left behind, because increasingly the journey is starting less.
So where do you think we are on that journey now? And I know we're talking about 2027, or that's the plan. We're trying to talk about 2027 at the moment, but this stuff is happening so fast.
Yeah.
How far along are we on that journey? Because I'm just putting myself in that. I'm trying to think about how I'm using AI. Now, I'm probably using AI more for work than I am personal at the moment. I haven't yet put in a search that is that specific. Okay. I probably would still be searching, I need new black ankle boots.
So for example, I'll give you an example. I'm going on holiday to Ibiza in July, and I was using Perplexity, which is one of the AI tools. Have you used it?
I don't actually use Perplexity.
It's
I
actually
use
really
many,
good.
But that is not on my list at the moment.
It's really good for shopping. Okay. It's probably the best one for surfacing products. Yeah. So I put in, I'm going to Ibiza at the end of July for 3 nights, and I need 6 outfits. I need I need 2 for day and 4 for night or whatever. And it came up. But the main blocker that I came across when I actually went through to transact is that all of the products were out of stock.
Okay.
So the issue is, and I think this is where things are still a little bit clunky, is where it's not actually matching up to the live inventory well. And I think retailers are still getting to grips with that.
Okay.
I think where things are getting more elevated and more innovative is where retailers are bringing their own proprietary AI systems in-house. But yeah, there's still a lot of challenges. We're very early on the road, I would say.
Okay, so you've just touched on a luxury brand there. So let's just talk about luxury for a moment. How will the luxury space continue to own that and protect it in an AI-driven, frictionless world?
I think, first of all, to answer that question, we have to go back to what constitutes luxury at the moment, because I think the very concept of luxury in itself is changing.
Yep.
I think you and I both know that luxury used to be defined by scarcity, by rarity, by inaccessibility, by high prices. But now we're living in a reality where luxury is all around us. It's ambient. You've got children growing up who, I think it's something like 68% of US alphas had already owned something that they considered a luxury product by the age of 10. Yeah. And it's because of dupe culture and resale and social media and all of these things. So luxury by its very nature is changing. It's less built on longing and desire because it's so much more accessible now. So I think luxury brands have to work harder in this changing landscape. Yeah. I think online, it's less about the product, and it's more about inviting people into a world or an ecosystem where they feel a little bit elite, a little bit seen. Maybe they feel like they've kind of been invited behind the scenes of something, like whether it's early access to a private drop or something like that, or a little code so that they get something and someone else doesn't. And then in a physical sense, I think it's more about sort of selective engagement around VIP invites. Maybe it's a brand tapping into some kind of niche hobby or subculture and kind of connecting with people in that way, because luxury brands have to differentiate harder now.
Okay, so let's look a little bit further forward. So let's think sort of 2030 rather than just next year.
Yeah.
And what's going to separate the winners from the losers? So who's still going to be around in 2030? And let's start again on AI. That is standard. I mean, it's standard now and it will only become more ubiquitous. What's actually going to differentiate retailers in 4 years' time?
The thing that's going to really differentiate retailers is the human premium. We say it a lot, but it is true.
Yes.
Having that, like, yes, you need AI to maybe curate, optimize, personalize, all of these things, but AI is only so good up to a certain point. And then I think a lot of consumers still want that human editorial tweak or that sense of human curation or judgment to make the final decision. I also think physical retail space is going to continue to be a huge differentiator. I mean, we all know that physical retail is changing absolutely loads, but I think some stores are going to be experiential destinations, some are going to be service hubs, some are going to be an extension of a brand's ecosystem that combines, wellness and hospitality and all the rest of it, and culture with retail. So that will be a differentiator. And finally, I think trust. I know we've talked about it before, but trust is going to just continue to be such a strategic asset. I think a retailer or a brand that are transparent about pricing, they're careful with customer data, they have good cybersecurity measures in place, they're there for you in moments of crisis, that's going to really compound that trust advantage as trust becomes more important.
I do think the bricks and mortar thing is really interesting. Sort of in the decade that I've been at WGSN, we've talked about it every year, probably with a slightly different lens, and talking to, friends who've set up fashion labels, to begin with, it was like, well, 10 years ago, it was like, why would I bother with bricks and mortar now? Because I will amplify my message in different ways. The only reason I would have it is a marketing tool. They are investing in bricks and mortar now because they want to create that community. They want to create something where they own the aesthetic completely, because they don't own it when their product is wholesale or it's showing up in other places. Do you think we're moving to a place where there are more stores, or is it going to be fewer, better stores?
I think it's the latter. It's 100% fewer, better stores. I think what we're seeing, it's not the death of the store, it's the death of the generic, underperforming average store. Because I think a lot of retailers are starting to realize, okay, I'm going to rationalize and optimize my store network. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the 100 worst performing stores and I'm going to consolidate and I'm going to refocus on my 50 best ones. And those ones are going to be sensational. They're going to be in the best locations. They're going to drive the most traffic. They're going to be the most experiential. They're going to have the best product mix on display. And there's already retailers that are doing it. I mean, Glossier, for example, the OG D2C millennial beauty brand, they announced literally a few weeks ago that they were closing 9 of their 12 stores. And they're just going to have 3. And they're also doing that alongside consolidating their SKU range. So they're really concentrating on hero products, 3 of their best stores, focusing down, more disciplined, better curation, really targeting the customer. And I think that's where we're going. And some of it is to do with cost. But a lot of it is also to do with this changing consumer mindset, which is essentially goes back to that future consumer emotion, selective engagement. It's about people are more discerning with their time. They want to go somewhere that's worth their effort, worth their money, worth their attention. And why would I go to a store where there's 50 of them? I'd rather go to the one best one where I know I'm going to get an exceptional time. And I think, that is the shift. That is the shift that's happening at physical retail.
Do you think that blurring, and we talked a little about service, but that was more about the expectation if you're going to differentiate, but with brands offering services alongside product, how's that going to evolve? And is that going to be the expectation that if you're a brand that I associate with, that I'm going to give my time, my money, my attention to, that I want more than just a product from you?
I think it goes back to the transformation economy, to be honest. I think the transformation economy is the lens which is making that shift visible because, it's not enough now just to stick a cafe in a store or to stick a bar in a store. Like everyone's been there and done that. I think what we're seeing now in terms of moving towards services offered is the differentiator is something that adds value to someone's life. It's, a store which runs foot diagnostics for the best possible sneakers for you. Sports Direct in Liverpool has got a High Rocks gym inside it. I mean, obviously that's like, a big scale example, but something like that. And I think activewear brands have an advantage in that sense because they can almost act like a diagnostic clinic, and you can leave with something that you didn't have before, which is a better understanding of your body, or, a shoe or an item which fits you perfectly, and it will make your functionality and your performance so much better. But more than that, I think we're moving towards stores becoming exclusive membership clubs, cultural stages. I mean, if you look at what someone like Kith is doing in New York with their Kith Ivy store, I mean, that is not retail. That is a lifestyle ecosystem. They've got paddle courts. They've got merch. They've got a restaurant. They've got, a bar. They've got everything. And it's like a members club. So I think, this idea of selling service alongside selling products, we are there, we're already there. And it's like, what's next? What's next? What's next is the next iteration of it, making people feel, that they're so embedded in your brand that they can't live without you.
Yeah, I really like that. With that in mind, what are the new roles, or maybe just the mindsets that retail leaders have got to start hiring for or honing right now?
I think in terms of roles, it's not a sexy one, but I would say something like a chief geopolitical officer, honestly.
Wow.
Someone who is there to monitor trade tensions and supply routes and regional instability, and then redirect that information, that intelligence, that live data into how you're allocating your capital, your assortment, your pricing, things like that. I definitely think every retailer needs some kind of chief cybersecurity officer. Cybersecurity is a hugely damaging issue for retailers. It's not just an IT issue. It's a continuity issue. It's a profit issue. It's a trust issue. So definitely that. And then finally, I would say, in terms of mindsets, really it's about this idea of being agile in the face of volatility. And we say this a lot on Insight. Right? This goes into a lot of the reporting that we do about the future, which is that volatility is the permanent operating condition now. It's not a phase, it's not temporary. This is it. And I think those who are designing for things to be certain and constant are just going to be left behind. If you're still optimizing on the mistakes you made last year, you're out of the game. You need to be thinking about, what am I doing next? How can I be agile? How can I be comfortable with the fact that things are going to change? And be curious about that and design for that constant sense of volatility. That's what it's all about, having that agile mindset.
It's so interesting because there are still so many leaders that I talk to who will say, well, we're just going to wait and see. Like, but what are you waiting for now?
Absolutely.
We can call it a polycrisis from a human consumer perspective, but this is the reality. We live in an ever-changing world. I actually got asked when I was appearing on someone else's podcast recently about, well, if change is constant, then what's the use of predicting change? And I was like, to arm you with that resilience
100%.
and to work that muscle, which every organization needs to have in its senior team. Are there any kind of watch outs? Are there AI backlashes that people need to be aware of? Are there, we're talking about this ever-changing world. What's the thing that people should be maybe more nervous about?
I think there's a line, right? There's a line between, when it comes to AI, especially in retail, there's a line between AI that helps you and AI that can exploit you. And it's especially apparent and especially visible when it comes to something like pricing. Because I think you've got AI that can personalize an offer for you in a way that's helpful and frictionless and brilliant and cost saving. But then you've also got something coming through like surveillance pricing. Do you know what surveillance pricing is? Surveillance pricing is scary. Okay, so surveillance pricing is this kind of new phenomenon where companies are essentially tracking your personal data, and they're looking at things like your location, your browsing history, your purchasing history, even what kind of device you're browsing on, whether it's a Mac or a PC or a phone or a tablet. And then they're working out, what is the maximum willingness that this person has to pay this price, and then they're setting the price for you at what they think the top end that you would pay is.
Okay.
Yeah. So whether it's an airline ticket, or something to eat or something to wear, and when consumers start to be aware of that they're being tracked and surveilled in that way, that's extremely damaging, because that damages trust.
That feels exploitative.
Exactly. So I think that's where the line is between AI that's helpful and efficient and useful, and AI which is just trying to extract something from you and in a way that feels damaging. And that is extremely hard to get that trust back.
Yeah. Because I think we've all been aware of things like, flight prices particularly, like you're searching and then you don't book that day and then the next day and the price has gone up. And then if you clear your browser history or go incognito, then suddenly it's back to the price it was before. But just working out, well, am I on a more expensive phone? So you can probably charge me with a bit more money.
Well, that's it. They will look at like the device, exactly the type of phone that you're using. It's scary.
That is quite scary. This feels like the wrong question to ask you as the last question, given we've just been talking about surveillance pricing and now I'm completely freaked out. But are you more anxious or hopeful about the future with all the knowledge that you've got?
I think, you know what, I am hopeful about the future. I am actively hopeful about the future, which I think is different from being passively hopeful about the future. And look, there are a ton of reasons to not be hopeful and to be anxious about the future. We've talked about a lot of them just now. But I think the thing which gives me hope is that every single one of these issues also opens up a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Gen AI is changing retail so much. Like, service is going to hit levels that it's never hit before. You can develop an app in half a day. You can have the most frictionless, effortless, amazing in-store experience. Things like that. Even things like climate adaptation. I could talk about it forever, but those things are so important. They're so helpful. They're commercially useful. They're better for the planet. All of these things. So I think, on balance, this is the most strategically interesting and exciting time in a generation in retail, and that is what gives me hope, I think.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Really, really good. Thank you, Laura. A huge thank you to my guest today, Laura Saunter, WGSN's Head of Retail Forecasting. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Do come back in 2 weeks' time for the next Lives of Tomorrow. And in the meantime, check out my colleague Sandra Napoli's podcast, WGSN's Create Tomorrow. I'm Carla Bazzashi, CEO of WGSN, and I'll see you next time.